And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Dragons!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
I'm going to let him take it over from here.
All right. For week 4, quarterbacks first. Studs, number 1, Jared Goff. 378, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's the number 5 quarterback on the year.
That's right.
That offense is rolling.
Dude.
I can't say the same about their defense, which is
probably
good for
the
fantasy.
best thing for fantasy.
Exactly. So, their offense is surprising everyone, especially him. I mean, he's never been one to put up big numbers, but this year he's doing great. Number 2, he had his best game of the year. Russell Wilson, 237, 2 touchdowns, and also had a rushing touchdown. He's kind of been underwhelming this year. I don't think he's done what everybody thought he was.
Definitely not. Definitely not me. I mean, honestly, just super disappointed. Like, I mean, he's always been a cerebral player, like very smart, and he just kind of looks like he's not ready. He wasn't ready for the season to start, and he's still. I mean, I don't know if anybody's had the poor luck of watching most of the game tonight that we're kind of doing this pod in the middle of, and I mean, it's looking bad again. Like, we're sitting here almost through the third quarter, and he's only got 7.8 points, 138 yards and 3 rushes for 23, and he's got a fumble. He hadn't lost one, but no touchdowns on the night for either team. So, I mean, but he had a good week last week, which, he should have against a Vegas defense that was not very good. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, just disappointing. I really think he's going to figure it out. They're going to get that chemistry going. But right now, it's really hard to start him if you got Jared Goff on your team. And like Josh and I were talking about right before the pod, I've benched Russell Wilson this week, and I'm starting Jared Goff, and I hope Goff keeps it rolling.
Well, him and the wide receivers just ain't on the same page. Like we were talking, we was watching a little bit of this game before, and he threw it one way, and the wide receiver went the other way. So something, and I will say one thing about this team: the coach does not look good. No, and I think that it probably has a lot to do with the team.
And I know it's kind of one of those things where, like, you got to give it time. But I kind of feel like this could be one of those situations where some of it's so obvious that he might not make it the whole year. I mean, I know he's young and he's new, and it's kind of just so obvious. Some of the coaching decisions are very head scratching,
Yep. And, they're probably going to get better as the season goes, but their schedule's not getting any easier.
That's
so,
right.
If they're 10 games in and they're not a chance to make the playoffs, I don't see how you can hardly keep him,
No, definitely not.
So we'll keep going. Number 3, Tom Brady, 385, 3 touchdowns. He looked like the quarterback we seen last year in this game. He's got most of his weapons back. I think he's fixing to start rolling.
Oh, yeah.
And if you need a quarterback and somebody has him on the bench, I would be trying to pick him up because I expect this to be continuing.
I've been I sent trade offer after trade offer in every league I was in for Tom Brady, and nobody would bite, man. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, he's washed up, He's been doing terrible. No, it was before last week.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I had a feeling like I could tell at the end of the game in week 4, he looked like he was getting his rhythm back, like he just, he had that presence that commanded. He was marching down the field, like he was hitting his spots, his guys, like he he just had it going, and I could tell he was getting it. And I was like, wide receivers are coming back. He's getting his mojo back. I was like, he's coming. And man, I sent out trade offer and nobody would bite. I'm like, man, I guess I'm not the only one on this train right now, but I think he's back. I mean,
definitely.
I don't think there. I really, there's only a handful of quarterbacks in the league that I would be starting over him right now. And honestly, if you got those, you probably don't have Tom Brady on your team anyway. You know.
Well, not only is he back, but some of these wide receivers are fixing to start putting up numbers too.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Matter of fact, that'll be something I'll be talking about later on when we talk about our starts. So we'll go to duds. Number one has to be Mitchell Trubisky.
Yep.
He was 84 yards, 1 interception before losing his job to Kenny Pickett, who has already been named the starter for this week. Kenny Pickett come in, threw an interception his first pass, had 120 yards, 3 interceptions himself. He did have 2 rushing touchdowns, though.
Yep.
The offense looked a little better with him, even though he had the 3 interceptions.
That's right. Now,
you got anything to say about him?
I actually do. Now, I will say I have not seen him personally, but I've heard 2 different analysts that watched it. All 3 interceptions were technically not really his fault.
I heard the same thing. Yeah.
Two of them went through the wide receiver's hands and were intercepted. And then the third one was a Hail Mary in the end zone at the end of the game. And
you can't count that.
You can't really count that. And that was the only 3 incompletions he had in the game. And technically they were all 3 completed. So technically he did not have an incompletion in the game. He completed all his passes. But might have
been to the wrong team, but he completed them. Yeah.
There's been a lot of analysts talking about he could be a league winner because he also rushed 6 times in this game and once for a touchdown. Oh, no, 2 touchdowns. I lied. Let me double check that. But yeah, I don't know if you just said that or not. You probably did, Josh. I was sitting here thinking about talking about those interceptions. And but yeah, he rushed 6 times, 15 yards, but for 2 touchdowns. So you're getting the rushing upside. A fairly efficient passer, hopefully, which always tends to lead to good things in the NFL. And I mean, with weapons, now he does have a pretty poor offensive line, but his defense isn't what it used to be. So they're going to have to score, and they're probably going to be throwing the ball. Now, he is one that, that I kind of mentioned him and my probably number 1 overall waiver pick. I don't list him like that in our waiver column, but George Pickens. I just think they have a chemistry, and I think those 2 are going to be somebody we're going to talk about for several years to come together.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right. He was probably the number 1 guy to be picked up this week because he had a big game, and it looks like you said, they might have a little connection there.
That's right.
And they're going to be down. They're going to have to throw. Yeah. And so all that could mean big numbers for him.
And I do think this is a boost for Najee Harris. I really do. I think this is going to help him. I know you have him. I know at least 1 league. I don't know how many leagues.
Yeah, but 1 league. Thank God it's just 1 league.
Yeah, but I really do. I think this is going to be more of a passing threat, but I also think it's going to be a lot more accurate passes to Najee out of the backfield. So hopefully it's going to be a little bit of a boost. Maybe they can make something happen with that offensive line, make some magic. If not, I still think they could be a better offense than they have been with Trubisky.
Well, I need a big game from Harris so I can trade him. I've been trying to trade him. I cannot get nobody to bite.
I bet. Anyway.
Number 2, Marcus Mariota, 139 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns, pretty poor. 3, Trevor Lawrence had a subpar game, 174, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 fumbles. He had 5 turnovers in this game, which I know a lot of that was not all his fault. The offensive line,
they said it was misting and raining too in Philadelphia, and that there was a lot of analysts.
It was. I watched some of that game.
They're contributing the Jalen Hurts poor. Well, I say poor. It was a mediocre performance compared to what he's been doing they were contributing that performance of his to that as well.
Yeah, but I'm not worried about Lawrence.
No.
I think he bounces back big this week.
And like I was telling you right before we started, you take those turnovers away. I know they were there, but that's depending on your scoring, that's 10 points. You give him those 10 points, he's right back there, you know, lower in QB1 like he's been for most of the season, you know.
And you're going to have a game like that every once in a while. You
right.
can't be perfect every game. Now, hello?
Lost you there for a second. You back?
Yeah, I lost. Yeah, I'm back. Number 4, I got Matthew Stafford, and I'm really worried about this guy. 254, 1 interception, 1 fumble. He's the number 25 quarterback in fantasy football, and he's only thrown 4 touchdowns on the year.
Yep.
I mean,
I don't even.
You was
I
talking
didn't
about
even,
you've already
honestly,
dropped him in a league.
Yeah. I didn't even think he'd had 4. I'm shocked at that number.
Well, he didn't have one this week.
No, he did not. And that's sad because I didn't think he had that many, and he didn't have one this week. So that means he's had more than I thought he did in the past.
He's been pretty bad. But like we were talking, you know, I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive line.
Oh,
they're missing Whitworth, you know,
big time.
And I'm sure they've made a lot of phone calls trying to get him to come back. But you know, is he on Amazon or
he is? He's on the halftime show. I seen him.
He's living his best life right now.
No doubt.
They're not going to get him back.
I don't think he's missing all that, especially at his age. You know, it's not hard to stay in shape and stay ready for those games, you know, at his age. Because I believe he was, I don't know if I can pull it up on here, but I think he was 40 or 30, 41, something like that.
Well, not only that, you can't go out any better than he went out.
Oh,
I mean, he went out on top. You know, why would you want to come back on a team you know's not going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Yep.
But anyway, he's had a rough year, and you said you dropped him, and I really think you can drop him.
Yeah,
there's
40,
better options there.
40 years old.
I mean, if you're you know, if Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, either one of them.
Oh, if Jared Goff's out there, I honestly, you call it a hot take, whatever. I don't think it's that much of a hot take, but I think he finishes way ahead of Matthew Stafford this year. I don't even think it's a stretch.
No, I agree. Unless something crazy happens, but I don't see that happening. And number 5 for duds, I got Baker Mayfield, 197, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, a fumble. He looks like the worst quarterback in the league.
Honestly, Go ahead.
I believe Sam Darnold is probably over licking his chops.
I was about to say, how much longer till we see Sam? And honestly, as a DJ Moore owner, I've traded him in 2 leagues. I had him in 3 or 4. I had him in 3 leagues. I didn't have him in all 4. I had him in 3 leagues, and I've traded him in 2. And I mean, that's probably the best case scenario for DJ Moore right there, because at least we know Sam Darnold will throw him the ball. And you know,
they've showed him his face like off field, and some of the stuff he's not happy there, and something's got to give. I mean, the quarterbacks. I mean, it's going to be a change of quarterback. There's going to be a change of coach. Something's going to happen. And what's crazy about the whole situation, though, is the only game they won was to what? Our New Orleans Saints. Which sucks. But anyway.
And
we're going to go to Overachiever. I just got one on the list, but man, he had a game. Geno Smith. 320, 2 touchdowns, 49 yards, rushing with 1 touchdown. And he's number 10 quarterback on the year. A lot of people probably didn't realize he was that.
Yes, he is.
And he's led his team, who a lot of people didn't think would win a game this year, to a 2-2 record.
Yep, they're tied. That whole division is dotted up at 2-2, I think.
He's played good, and DK owners are really happy because
yes, I am.
Yeah, I picked him up off of waivers.
Lord,
last week, and then he turns around and has that game. Yeah.
Oh man.
So I was happy.
Yep.
About that. All right, let's skip over to running backs. Studs. number one. I've been waiting on this one. Austin Eckler had a big game. 60 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 catches for 49 and a touchdown. Had 3 touchdowns. He finally had that big game everybody's been looking for. And I think he's fixing to come around.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, he's such a talented player, such a good offense. It was just a matter of time. If you were able to trade for him and get him cheap, kudos for you. I mean, I didn't have him, and honestly, I really didn't try trading for him because most of my leagues until this past week with Javonte Williams getting hurt, I had multiple starting running backs, and I didn't need a running back. I mean, wide receivers where I've been hurting at, but if you did need one, I hope you targeted Austin Eckler and were able to get him on the cheap. But I think like you just said, I think he's on the upswing now, and it's hard to keep somebody that talented down this long.
Yep. Number 2, Josh Jacobs, 144, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches for 31 yards, monster game, come out of nowhere.
Yep.
Everybody been down on him. I don't really know what to think about this guy.
Honestly, I think he's talented. I just don't think he's managed and used appropriately in his offense.
Well, they've been down in games too, which hasn't helped.
But he's a good pass catcher. 5 for 5, if I'm not mistaken, on pass catches this past week. I mean, that's what, it's not like he's not a good pass catcher like some of these other running backs. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, 6 targets, 5 catches for 31 yards. But it's not like he's not a good pass catcher. The week before, he was 5 for 5. So,
well, it might be too some of that they have so many weapons to throw to.
That's true.
He kind of gets left out.
Yep.
Because they definitely and it's like Carr likes to move it down the field too. He likes to try to get it. Hit those home runs.
Yep.
And I think that just kind of lays him out. But this might show him, that maybe we need to get it to him more.
Yep. And I'll tell you, well, just one more thing, pulling it up and looking at him. I did not realize he's only 24.
I didn't either. But he come out of Alabama, didn't he?
He did. And I swear I would have put money. He was like 26, 20 around Austin Eckler. Eckler's 27, but Jacobs is only 24. Young.
Is Jacobs the one from Alabama that was like homeless, living in a car with his parent, his like dad or something? And I think it is. Like had a really rough upbringing.
Well, a lot of them have. Honestly, Derrick Henry was he was raised by his grandmother, and he had a pretty rough upbringing. But I don't think he was living homeless. It might have been Josh Jacobs.
I think he was. I think him and his dad or something was living in a car, maybe or something. It was like, crazy. And he's up, getting to Alabama and making something of himself, which kudos to him.
That's right.
Number 3, and this guy here has, been great all year. Nobody really gave him a chance. Miles Sanders.
Yep.
134 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches for 22 yards.
Yep.
He's a must start every week now, unless something changes. Number 9 running back on the year.
Yep.
On the team that I was talking about, I had Najee Harris. Luckily, I got Miles Sanders late. And actually, I'm probably not even gonna start Najee Harris this year, this week, and roll with him and put a wide receiver in.
Yeah.
But man, he's had that offense is just really good. And they've been up in games, been able to run the ball.
And I'll confess, I passed on him several times, and he almost made the point in a couple drafts where it was such a good value. And that's what I think we've talked about before, where you drafted him late because he was such a good value in your draft. But with their history of always playing like 3 running backs and Jalen Hurts running, his injury history, but it looks like they're finally leaning on him a little bit more. They're throwing him the ball a little bit more, and he's getting some goal line work, and he's finally staying healthy. I mean, good for him because he's a super talented back. A lot of people forget he was the running back that followed up Saquon Barkley out of Penn State, and I remember watching him in college, and I was like, man, they got Saquon come out of Penn. I think, I'm pretty sure it's Penn State. Yeah, I know Miles Sanders went there, but I remember I was like, man, they're just churning out these guys. Yeah, Saquon come out of Penn State, And then Miles Sanders was like the next guy up, and I was like, good Lord. And sure enough, back to back, they popped them dudes out. And I was like, man. And I thought he was really going to be something coming into the league. And then they kind of just, like I said, they just kind of limited him a lot and never
Well, I
really.
think injuries too. He had some injuries. You know, he had like a really good first year, maybe. And
I'll
seemed
tell
like
you in just a second.
And then he had some injuries and just never got back on track.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's finally doing it.
Yep, you're right.
And
2019, his first year, put up 222 fantasy points, which, you know, I mean, it was okay, but for a rookie. But he had 50 catches on 63 targets for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then looks like about 818 yards rushing.
If I ain't mistaken, he might have done that like the second half of the season too. Like maybe he didn't start and then something happened and he ended up playing like the second half of the year.
And honestly, the next year, if that was the case, the next year he pretty much did the same thing. He was a little bit less on the catches, but the targets were there. But man, I don't know what was going on. But he had 52 targets, but he only caught 28 of them, which is pretty terrible. But
that's pretty
bad.
bad.
That kind of goes down to your quarterback sometimes too, depending on the targets. But yeah, I mean, he busted onto the scene that year, and then really in last year he was such a bust, and that's probably what got everybody a sour taste in their mouth, you know.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. He had done like really good towards the end of the year, so they thought, well, next year he's going to be the man, and then he just never done much. But he's still young.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I had him still. Yeah, 25. You know, it looks like he came out same year Josh Jacobs did.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, whatever piece of this Philadelphia offense you can get, you want.
Yep. And then the last one on studs I'm going to talk about is Damian Price.
Oh yeah.
Or Pierce. I'm sorry. 131 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 catches for 8 yards. So the height that he had early, preseason, it looks like he finally done something. He's doing it on a bad team too.
Man, I'll tell you, just when you watch him play, like the eye test that they talk about, he passes with flying colors, man.
If I ain't mistaken, he might have done that on 14 carries.
We'll let you know in just a second.
Because if that's the case, man, that makes it look even better.
You are correct. 14 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. 6 targets, 6 catches, and 8 yards. But hey, 6 catches. Who's complaining about that? Even if it is 8 yards.
Oh, you in a PPR, you love it.
And that's a touchdown.
I don't care how many
there.
yards he gets.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was in there for a 68. This also was his highest snap percentage yet, 68% of the plays. So he was at 29 week 1, 62, 59, and then 68.
If he's getting up around 60-70% of the snaps, you got to start him.
Personally, for me, I mean, they're playing Jacksonville, who's been pretty good on defense, especially their linebackers this year. I mean, I've got him in leagues. I'm pretty much going to flex him, but he's getting to that running back 2 conversation right now, because running back's been pretty tough this year. And if he keeps performing, I mean, you can't deny. I mean, this is 2 weeks in a row. He's really put up RB2 numbers for you. And really, that was RB1 numbers.
On 14 carries, that's crazy. 131 on 14 carries.
Yep.
And I'm going to mention Henry. He had a good game.
Oh, yeah.
114 and 1 touchdown. After the first 2 weeks, everybody was worried. But he's looking like he's back.
Just like Eckler, you can only keep them down so long until that talent busts through and they start getting in a groove and getting on a roll.
Yep. We'll skip over to duds now. Number 1, this guy, a lot of people was big on coming into the year. After the first game, everybody jumped off. Cam Akers. Yep. I mean, 8 carries, 13 yards, no catches. Terrible. Yep. And then Henderson, he done a little better, 7 for 27 with 3 catches for 12 yards. But you can't start either one of these
Nope.
guys right
Their
now.
their
On a
offense
terrible
in
offense?
general, unless you have Higbee or Cup, that's pretty
Yep.
much the only people you can start on that entire team right now.
Well, speaking of them, I had this wrote down, but I think between Cup and Higbee, there was 25 catches or 24. It was something crazy like that.
Hang on.
Cup
I'll
had
tell you
14
what you wrote
catches.
down. Yep.
Cup had 14 catches, and I think Higbee, let's see, how many catches did he have? 10. So they had 24 catches between them.
Yep.
That's crazy.
And then not only that, but they had, let's see, 19 and 14. So 33 targets between them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, those are the only two you can even start on that team.
Yep.
Who were one of the best offenses last year on the Super Bowl winning team, and they have just, that team has just fell off.
Yep.
Number two, another one people were big on preseason, Tony Pollard, 8 attempts, 6 yards, 1 catch for 2 yards. Yeah, I don't know that you can start him. Do you see a little more from him?
I think it's coming a little bit more eventually. I mean, Zeke hasn't really held up as far as, health wise an entire season in the last couple. So I still think he's got better days ahead if Zeke gets banged up. But also, I think when Dak Prescott gets back, I think the offense, it might take a week, but I think that offense starts to find its groove again, especially with the defense performing. I think they're going to feed off that energy. And I think this offense gets going, and I think Tony Pollard's going to take that step forward when he gets a little bit more confident quarter. Now, Cooper Rush has been great in his stead, but he's been a game manager. He's
been a
not
great
losing the game.
NFL quarterback,
That's
not
right.
a great fantasy quarterback.
Yeah,
but as far
he's
as
not losing the game,
he's keeping his team just
That's
where
right.
they need to be for Dak to come back.
That's right.
Yeah. Number 3, James Robinson had a bad game, but the whole team had, like you said, the weather wasn't good.
And
8
Philadelphia's
attempts, 29.
defense, man.
Oh, they are good.
Yep.
But I wouldn't worry about this.
Nope.
Matter of fact, we'll talk about it later, but I'm big on James Robinson this week. And number 4, Jonathan Taylor.
Yep.
20 rushing attempts for 42 yards. Now, I don't know, when did this injury happen? Did it happen
I think it was toward the end of the game, honestly, because they were talking about that. As far as we know, it didn't. I don't think I've seen a specific point where they said it.
So this probably wasn't affected.
No,
his numbers probably wasn't affected by the injury.
And looking at his prior weeks, it goes right in line with his yards per carry in the prior weeks. I've got him on my dynasty, on my keeper team, and it's just been rough.
Yeah, I have him on a team too, and when you pick when he's your number 1, this is not what you're looking for.
No, definitely not.
But man, watching some of that game just tonight, man, their offensive line is horrible, and I just don't understand how they can go from being so good last year, which I know they had some rookies playing tonight, but man, they're just bad. Now we go to overachievers. Number 1, Rashad Penny, 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. Man, I actually started him this week. I just had a feeling he was going to have a pretty good game, and he showed out. Don't expect this every week. But he will have some of those games. Towards the end of the year, he had a couple of them. You just got to kind of play the matchup with him.
I will go ahead and forewarn you. He showed up on the injury report this week with a shoulder injury from the game. He did not practice Wednesday, but he practiced in full today. So he should be good, but with his history,
I wouldn't plan on playing him this week anyway.
Yeah, it's going I'll
not
talk
against
about
our
that
Saints,
later. But I think if you have Penny and you have the room, I think you got to have Ken Walker. Because I think Ken Walker's going to get more involved, but especially if Penny goes down, I think Ken Walker gets like a full workload because Travis Horner was their like other guy, and he got hurt. He's out. And now they got DJ Dallas, who, like, every time he gets a chance, they find somebody else. They kind of look like they don't want to give him the ball any more than they have to. And he plays special.
Well,
teams.
they use him on special teams a lot.
That's
too,
right.
Yeah.
So
and if you're planning on him being your running back, you're not using him on special teams that much.
Yeah. So and that's what worried me about Mike Boone this week, because he's a big special teams contributor, not just this week, but going forward with Javonte Williams. He's a big special teams contributor, and there's a lot of speculation. That's why they signed Latavius Murray, because they don't want Mike Boone's involvement in the offense to be any more than it already is. And so, I mean, I like him as a pickup just in case, but I really would not get my hopes up, you know. And I think as far as this tonight, I don't think he's done any more than he normally does. Anyway, sorry to get off on a tangent there on that. Right. But anyway.
Well, and when you say that about Kenneth Walker, I don't think Rashad Penny has made it through a full season without missing games. Either.
Not even, and I don't know if he's made it through a full season without some kind of significant injury at some point or another,
like season ending.
Yeah. And because either he comes back from it midway through the year and then plays, or it happens in the middle of the year and then he's out for the rest of it. I'm pretty sure that's been, because he's been in the league, it looks like 4 years, so this will be year 5. But looking at his carries, I mean, he doesn't have but one season he made it over 100 carries, and it was 119, and that was 21 last year. And he got hurt then, you know. So, I mean, he's never had more than 100 carries in a season except for 21. So you know.
Walker's that's a good stash for somebody if they're looking for like later in the season. He's probably going to end up starting before the year's over.
And he's getting more involved, you know. So I mean, it could be more of a timeshare.
And actually, I liked him probably better than any of the other running backs coming out of college.
Yeah.
Number 2, I'm going to say is overachiever, but we both talked and we both kind of expected this from this guy, Jamal Williams.
Oh, yeah.
108, 2 touchdowns. Had a great game.
Yep.
Number 3, I still got him on overachievers. CEH, he keeps doing it. 19 carries, 92 yards, 1 touchdown. You know, one thing about him I've noticed here lately, he's getting more volume too.
Yeah,
19
I was
carries.
about to say, originally his efficiency was so high, it's just hard to believe he continues that. But with this volume, I mean, we're talking RB1 status, you know.
Well, in the way Kansas City's playing right now, they're going to be up in games to where they can run the ball, you know, in the fourth quarter. So, hey, this might be his year.
Well, and, you know, a couple analysts on the last game, I watched a pretty good bit of their last game this past week against, it was Tampa Bay, I believe. And I was watching that game, and they were talking about Pacheco running the ball so well. And then, man, not my favorite analyst, but Chris Collinsworth made a great point. And he said, I think CEH is over there watching Pacheco run well, and that's giving him some juice, you know, to be like, man, I'm not going to let this guy take my job, you know. And I think it's where I think he's right dead on with that. I think he's seeing Pacheco in his rear view, and he's like, man, I'm not about to lose this starting job on this awesome team with this great quarterback. He said, I'm about to try to turn it up a notch however I can. And I mean, he's looking pretty good.
Well, that team's just running on all 8 cylinders like a, you know, well-oiled machine, man. They're just, they can do no wrong on offense. Number 4, Breece Hall finally had that kind of a breakout game that we've been looking for.
Yep.
He had the volume, 17 carries, 66 yards. He had a big touchdown at the end of the game that I noticed the coach was so pumped after, and I just have a feeling that that's going to get him more time on the field.
If you look at the snap percentage, I mean, I can pull it up, but it'll take me a minute to get between him and Carter. But it's slowly, the snap percentage and the plays, the handoffs, the catches, everything has just been slowly going down for Carter and going up for Breece Hall for the last 2 weeks. or really even 3
But when they
weeks.
trusted
Week
him,
1, it was really down, and then week 2, it went up a little bit. Week 3, it went up a little bit, and then last week, I mean, he was way ahead of Michael Carter.
well, they trusted him too at the end of the game, which
right.
is big. You know, if they trust you to score that last touchdown, you know, to seal the game, you know, I thought that showed a lot.
That's right.
I feel like he's fixing to start breaking out even more. At number 5, man, this guy come out of nowhere, Latavius Murray. 57 yards, a touchdown, caught a catch for 8 yards, looked good for the Saints, turned around and was picked up off of
our practice
from the
squad.
Saints, off our practice squad. And so we don't no longer have him.
Now he's with the Broncos, and honestly, still might be a decent kind of wait and see pickup, because tonight neither Melvin Gordon nor Mike Boone has looked that great. Now, what you do have to remember is Latavius Murray, I believe, is 32 years old.
Yeah, he's getting on up there.
He doesn't quite have the legs. 32, doesn't quite have the legs he used to. But
he's not going to be a every down.
He won't.
But he's going to be. He could be a third down back or goal line. He's going to get goal line carries if they use him.
And that's what I was going to say. I think he's going to get the goal line work there if they use him. And I mean, it's not I don't think it's out of the realm to see him get 10 to 12 handoffs a week and, you know, get 40, 50 yards and a touchdown or 2. You know, if he's used on the goal line, the only thing you got to worry about is how poorly Denver's offense has looked so far this year.
Yeah.
But he's
he's a Melvin Gordon fumble away from getting 10 to 12 carries.
That's right.
And actually in this game, Gordon fumbled a ball. But his knee was down, so it didn't count. So we'll see how that works.
Well, you know, the coach has seen that, and you know.
Oh yeah.
Even though it didn't count, I guarantee they're thinking about it.
I think on the next drive, Boone got put in, if I ain't mistaken.
He did.
So, anyway, that's somebody to keep an eye on for sure. Let's see. We'll go over to wide receivers. Studs, man. This guy had a monster game. Justin Jefferson, 10 catches, 147, and a rushing touchdown. Now with him, he's going to have these monster games, but he's also going to have a game every once in a while where it's like he's not even on the field. He was the same way last year. He'd have 4 or 5 like really good games, and then you'd have one that, you know, you'd be like, man, where was he at? But the good outweighs the bad, and when he's good, he's as good or better than anybody in the league. Number 2, Mike Evans, big bounce back game after, you know, being out of game and, you know, all the stuff that's Tampa Bay's have been having to deal with. 8 catches for 103 and 2 touchdowns. He's a touchdown machine when he gets the ball. Big target. Number 3, Cooper Kupp, 14 catches, 122. We already talked about him and Higbee being the only 2 that you can really start on that team. Number 4, Tyreek Hill, 10 catches for 160. Like Tyreek Hill said, it don't matter who throws me the ball.
Yeah, it's the truth.
One of the somebody was talking to him after a game, and they was talking about him, you know, catching the ball from another quarterback. He said, he said, you could throw me the ball and I can put up these kind of numbers. So, and I think he's right. T. Higgins, big game, 7 catches, 124 and a touchdown. And Deebo Samuel, 6 catches, 115 and a touchdown. So it looks, you know, pretty much wide receivers, all the guys that are supposed to be producing this week, most of them did produce.
And after you go over that whole list right there, honestly, you know, I mean, I can't say that I seen it coming because I didn't. And I still think it'll be okay, but it seems like the wide receiver, it's like the year of the wide receiver, and it seems like they're slowly taking over those top draft pick positions. The more consistent they become, like, I mean, you can't argue Cooper Kupp's number one right now, even on this
I promise
terrible
you,
offense.
if people redrafted if there was a redraft, if Cooper Kupp wasn't number one, somebody would be crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
how could you not pick your number one?
Yeah, I mean, with Justin Jefferson's bad weeks, I'd take him over Jonathan Taylor right now.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
You know, same thing with, I mean, honestly, Tyreek Hill. The way Tyreek Hill's been,
man,
he's been more consistent this year than he has been with the Chiefs.
Well, he's leading the league in receiving yards. He's above Kupp. Kupp's number two. He's number one.
And I've got a guy in one of my leagues that went wide receiver 1, 2, and 3. And I'll tell you, I don't think
he's probably leading the league.
And he's got CEH. He's got CEH as his number 1 running back. And then his number 2, who did he have?
Yeah, he's going to be tough.
I'm telling you. And I'm just like, because I think he's got here. I'll leave him unnamed just in case he wants to stay that way. But I'm going to pull his team up and go over. And the more I look at it, makes me want to think he's got Justin Herbert, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Number 2, he kind of rolled the dice. He's got Khalil Herbert. Then he's got Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Brown. That was his 1, 2, and 3. That's right.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
I mean, it just kept falling. You know, a lot of us are picking running backs left and right. And he's like, nope, going wide receiver. And then on the bench, he's got Tony Pollard, A.J. Dillon, Travis Etienne. You know, I think he was banking on Etienne being a little bit better. But you got Dillon, you got Pollard, you had CEH. I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean,
I think that's the future, man. I think
it really is starting to look that way. And that's why I'm like, I mean, maybe I'm 1 year too late, but it's always in the past, it's been like, if you don't get running backs early, you're going to be left out in the dust. And, you know, as the bell cow running back kind of fades away, it's starting to seem like you got these wide receivers that are consistent enough to carry your team week in and week out to take the place of those bell cow running backs at the top of the drafts.
And, it's definitely changed since when I first started in fantasy.
Oh, no
I mean,
doubt.
I was like, my first 3 rounds, it was running backs.
Oh,
I wouldn't even look at a wide receiver.
I'm still doing that, you know, and I've had success doing it, but this year has been tough because I did that, you know.
Well, this is the first year.
Javonte Williams on 3 teams either, but you know.
Yeah. Well, this is the first year I didn't pick a running back the first round. I picked Justin Jefferson with the number 6 pick.
Yep.
And I'm pretty happy with it. Even though he's had some bad games.
Yeah. But
you
still,
know,
the weeks
his
that
good
he does
games
well,
are going to win
you.
Yeah, you win. Yeah.
And I mean, I remember in my keeper league, first guy had first pick, never the first pick in the draft. Never in a million years would I have put money that he would pick Cooper Kupp, and he did. First pick in a 14-team keeper league. You keep one person, which you can only keep them outside the top 2, so it didn't really matter anyway. But a 14-team league, which makes a draft really thin, he picked Cooper Kupp with the number 1 pick. I had the number 2 pick, and I went Jonathan Taylor. But I didn't think – I just knew he was going Jonathan Taylor or CMC. And he went.
So at the time, you was happy about it.
I was. And now I'm like, man,
he knew something I didn't.
I'm behind in the times, apparently. But I'll tell you, man, I really see it. I really see it coming through this year. And I think we're having a turn in the tide in fantasy.
Yep. I think it started a few years ago. I started seeing it, but right now it's, and I've even kind of went away from the way I'd done before. I had to kind of change to keep up, you know?
That's right.
So we'll go duds right quick. Number 1, Julio Jones. He come back and had 1 catch for 7. With all the weapons that's back, he's probably going to be the odd man out there.
Now, I will say that Todd Bowles did say after the game on Monday or Tuesday that Julio got banged up again, did not specify, or he said nicked up. He did not specify on what, and I don't know if that contributed to his poor play. But just anybody that's got him out there, man, I don't
drop him.
know. Yeah, I don't know if you can hang on to him after this.
Not with Godwin back.
No.
Godwin got 10 targets this week, and it's probably just going to go up.
Yeah, I mean, Julio only played 28% of the snaps. So,
But I mean, the last few years that's been him. You don't know week to week whether he's playing. He's questionable every week.
Yeah, I don't think unless there's a big injury again, like Godwin goes down or something, I really don't think he's relevant anymore.
Yeah. Number 2, Amari Cooper, 1 for 9. You got to roll the dice with him. You know, you don't know from week to week what it's going to be. You know, he's had a couple of big games, but you don't know when those games are going to be. So it's hard with a player like that.
Well, they're such a run-heavy team, and their defense is fairly competent, even though they didn't have Myles Garrett this week, which hurt them pretty bad on their defensive side. But, you know, that's one of those teams that they're not going to have to throw the ball some games, especially when you got Jacoby Brissett. They're really not wanting to throw the ball. You know, it's just kind of a roll of the dice, and he might be one of those guys the next time he has a really big game, you might want to think about trading high. You know, I mean, you do have Deshaun coming back at the end of the year, but I mean, depending on when you might have him for the playoffs, but if you could get somebody that could at least get you, like, you know, what I've always heard from several analysts, you got to get to the playoffs before you can win the playoffs. So if he's somebody that's going to keep you from getting there, and you need to trade for that key piece, I think it's worth it if he has another good game.
Well, or you know what these analysts say, it's a week-to-week game. You can't
right.
worry about next week. You got to win this week, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, Gabe Davis, 1 for 13. He's not been what everybody thought he was going to be, which I know he's been banged up.
I'll say, I think that ankle injury is – I want to see what he does. He got a full practice in Wednesday and Thursday. I want to see what he does this week, practicing in full, not limited at all. I mean, I hope that that's what it is, because he looked like he was really going to break out and just really underperformed. But, I mean, he's playing a lot of snaps, 96% week 3, 98% week 4. So, but, I mean, this is a Pittsburgh defense that's not that great. So, we'll see.
The thing about him, so he had a pretty good game the first week. It wasn't just like a monster game, but it was a pretty good game. But, you know, he hadn't really done much since.
No.
Which I know injuries has a lot to do with it. But he's one, too, that I don't think is going to be like, it's kind of the same way as Amari Cooper. He's going to have games where he don't do much, but then he'll have 1 or 2 really good games here and there. I'm more of the consistency. I'd rather have a consistent player that you know what you're getting from every week.
That's right.
Than one of those, because if you get a game where somebody scores 2 or 3 points, it just kills your team.
That's right.
Number 4, Allen Robinson, 2 for 7. Man, drop him if you have him.
He's droppable.
Number 5, this is a guy that I was kind of surprised. I have him on a team, and he hasn't done much at all this year. That's Terry McLaurin, 2 for 15.
Yep.
He's got a good matchup.
I'm going to talk about him in a little bit.
Yeah, he's got a good matchup this week. And I believe if he don't do it this week, man, try to get rid of him.
Yeah, I don't think you drop him, but
you can't hardly drop somebody like that.
I got some really good points to talk about, which, I mean,
right,
we can talk
we'll
about
wait
now,
on him
but
then.
we'll
wait on him. Okay, so we'll go to overachievers. Number 1, this guy I picked up off the waiver wire.
Yep.
DK Metcalf, 7 catches, 149 yards. You know, he can do that for you.
Honestly, I before the year started, everybody was so low on him. I'm like, they have to do something with somebody. Like, their whole offense was like not even ranked hardly at all anywhere. And I'm like, he is the most talented player on that team. You can't tell me the coaches don't know that, and they're not going to get him the ball.
Well, they gave him the money.
Yeah, I mean,
follow the money. That's what they say. Follow the money. If somebody gets the money, then they're going to be getting them the ball.
And honestly, he was another one of those value picks that kind of fell to me into a couple leagues. And I've got him in two. I've got him in 2 leagues, and he just kept falling. And I'm like, this guy was like a top 10 wide receiver for the last couple of years. And I know he lost a better quarterback, but heck, right now, Gino looks like Russell Wilson, and they're giving him the ball. So, I mean, that's why you just never know with football. You just bet on the talent. That's all you really can do most of the time,
Yeah. But yeah, he's like Miles Sanders we were talking about. He just sat up there at the top, and nobody wanted him. Goes like a round or two. Yep. And somebody finally says, man, if he's just going to sit there,
that's right.
I'm going to take him. And that's kind of how it happened. I think DK almost went 2 rounds before anybody just sitting there at the top,
Yeah.
Number 2, Josh Reynolds, 7 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. I don't know when Amon-Ra gets back.
I think he'll be back. He's limited. He's practicing limited right now.
But I think Reynolds has a role here.
I do too. Well, he has a history. I talked about a little bit on my waiver podcast. He has a history with Goff. They played together whenever he was first drafted in Los Angeles for the Rams. He was the 3rd wide receiver. They drafted him as a rookie, and he was supposed to supplant who was that? He was playing behind there. Dang, I gotta go way back. Who was it? The Rams. It was 3 years ago, I think. 3 or 4 years, and he was
with the Rams.
Yes.
Was it Vance Jefferson?
No, he was before. He was there before Van Jefferson. Hang on. But anyway, he was the 3rd wide receiver there. He was kind of like Josh Palmer at the Chargers. He was that guy, that handcuff, where if somebody got hurt, they're coming in, and heck, he's been in the league for 5 years. So this will be year 6, but he was at the Rams in 17, 18, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then he got sent to Detroit last year. But I mean, he was that guy. He was kind of the backup forever. And then he just never supplanted whoever was in front of him. But him and Goff have that chemistry because they played together in practice. And I think, I really think he supplants Chark as the number 2 wide receiver right now. I mean, Chark's looked good, but he can't stay healthy. And then, he had that big week, and we talked about him, and then bam, he just disappears with no catches. And Reynolds kind of appeared out of nowhere with a touchdown catch. So they look like they got a chemistry thing going again. It's going to be Amon-Ra, and the way they're throwing it, they can support 2 pass catchers, and Reynolds, honestly, like a lot of analysts have been saying, who else were they going to throw it to?
Well, and with Swift
out
too, which got a lot of passes. They're going to have
correct.
To find somebody else to throw it. Number 3, Corey Davis, 5 catches, 74 yards, and 1 touchdown.
It
looks him and Wilson, they had a little chemistry last year, and it looks like it's carried over. If he's out there, he'd be a pickup. If you needed a wide receiver. Number 4, Alan Lazard finally had a pretty good game. 6 catches for 116 yards. Was a touchdown away from having a monster game. And number 5, we had already talked about this guy, I think. George Pickens. 6 for 102. Like we talked about, he was probably the number 1 pickup in fantasy this week. We'll go over to tight ends real quick. Number 1, maybe the best guy in fantasy this week, TJ Hawkinson. 8 catches, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Man, I mean, he really showed out.
And honestly, if they're missing pass catchers, I think he can do it week in and week out. But if they're not, and that's the thing, they use him to block so much, and it takes so much away from his game. but that's why their offensive line has been so well and protected Goff so well, so far this year, is keeping him in when they can. But honestly, I think he's going to be better than he has been in the past. I think he could be just starting to get going.
Yeah. Number 2, Mo Alley Cox, which he should be on Overachievers.
Yeah.
6 catches for 185, or for 85, not 185, and 2 touchdowns. But that's a good line. Until I seen that, I didn't realize he had 6 catches. I thought he had a couple of touchdown catches, but they actually threw to him quite a bit.
That's right.
But definitely an overachiever.
Yeah, well, I talked a little bit about him, and he was kind of the last of the waiver line because there's not a lot out there, and I really think it's fool's gold. And looking at his stat line with 2 minutes to go in this game in the fourth quarter, and he's got 1 target with 1 catch for 7 yards. So, I mean, tight end so barren, and honestly, like I said on my waiver pod, when you put up that many points as a tight end, you got to mention them. But I mean, their team in general, it's been a different tight end each week for the Colts. You just never know who it's going to be. And you want to look elsewhere for more consistency.
And so when you're talking tight end, you got to always bring this guy up. Travis Kelce, 9 catches, 92 yards, 1 touchdown. I don't know how anybody could not have him preseason as the number 1. I mean, I had him. I don't care, what Andrew's done. I would never take anybody over Travis Kelce.
No, not over him. Not after losing Tyreek Hill too, and the chemistry him and Mahomes have. Like, I mean, he would have more games where he wasn't as good with Tyreek Hill there, but with Tyreek Hill's gone, like, you can tell. I mean, it's almost Stafford Cooper Cup, esque.
Yeah. Not
quite to that effect, but he's constantly looking for Kelce and getting him the ball, especially in the red zone.
Well, and he's got such good hands too.
Yeah.
I mean, he rarely ever drops a ball or misses a ball. Number 4, this guy's done well this year. We done talked about him. Higbee, 10 catches, 73 yards. We already said, him and Cup combined for 24 catches between them. For somebody that didn't pick a top 5 tight end and probably picked him up, they got to be pretty happy.
Well, and honestly, he was on the waiver or the free agency in several leagues to start the season.
Yeah.
And obviously he's not now, but he was, and starting to look like a really good pickup.
All right, let's go to duds because there's several of them.
Yeah.
Number 1, and he's been probably on number 1 on the list all but one game or one week this year, and that's Kyle Pitts. 1 catch for 4 yards. I have him in a keeper league, and I don't know what to do. I mean, the talent's there.
Yep.
The only thing I'm hoping for is with the running backs injured there.
Yep.
That maybe they pass it a little more.
Well, and I think
I'm worried about him.
Honestly, I think what you have to hold out hope for in this situation is eventually Marcus Mariota's poor play. He gets benched, and they try to find out what they have in Desmond Ridder, who's more of a pocket passing quarterback. He still runs, but he's more of a pocket passing quarterback and a gunslinger. And a lot of younger quarterbacks like to confide in their tight end. They're more likely to go to that safety valve than, more experienced quarterbacks looking to push the ball down the field. So, I mean, that's what
I'm sure Drake London's hurt him some because he's another big target.
Definitely.
He looks almost like a tight end out there. So I'm sure that's hurt him some.
But then also, I've heard a lot of analysts say that they're just not scheming to get Kyle Pitts the ball. Like, it's coaching, which scares you even more, because if the coach isn't trying to get him the ball, then how do you expect the quarterback to get him the ball? Because the coach is one calling the plays, and that's what, it's geared towards certain players. And that's what they're saying. They're not scheming to get Kyle Pitts the ball, which why would you not? One of the biggest athletic mismatches on the field. And
the unicorn.
I mean, and you spent that draft capital on him. I don't see how upper management's not like screaming down the ladder, like, what are you doing, man? But
yeah, but do they really want to win?
Would
they rather
exactly what some other people have pointed out. Does it matter right now? And not really, So, I mean, the only thing you do, I don't think you drop him for sure, but I think you try to pick up one of these waiver guys and play him until he starts doing
like
something.
I told you, there's really nobody left.
Yeah.
But the problem with him is you're afraid if you don't play him,
he's gonna have that.
He has that game. Yeah, which he can have,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just in a bind with him. Number 2, Andrews. He had a off game, 2 for 15.
Yep.
Kittle 2 for 24. Waller,
that's somebody I'm
3
worried
for 24.
About Kittle.
Yeah, I wasn't big on him anyway.
I wasn't either, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, he just doesn't seem to be involved in the offense. He's blocking. He's a great, like we've talked about other players, a great real life tight end. I mean, an awesome one. But when it comes to fantasy, especially this year and last year, he just not.
He's perfect
not
for that team.
That's right.
For what they do.
Right.
But for fantasy, he's just and he'll have a decent game every once in a while, but
yeah.
So that's 4 of the top 5 going into the season on the list. That's where we're at with tight ends right now.
Yep.
Overachievers, I should have had Mo Alley Cox on there, but I do have one other one on there. Will Dissly.
Oh, yeah.
He's number 10 on the year.
Yep.
That is, who would have ever thought that?
But I had him on my waiver list because he's got. Yeah, you go ahead. You were about to say exactly what I was going to add.
He's got 4 catches for 39 yards. He had a touchdown, so he's got 3 touchdowns on the year. Which, when you're talking about these lower end tight ends, you're looking for touchdown upside, and that's
exactly
he's getting you that. So that's where you're at. Tight end has been pretty rough this year, and there's been a couple of guys that's come out of nowhere, but for where you drafted some of these guys, they just hadn't produced. All right, so we can go on to the next segment. You want to go ahead?
All right. Yep. We can go ahead and get started with starts, sits, and sleepers. We're going to start off with starts. And these, just to remind you, if you haven't listened to the prior pods with this, the quarterbacks for our starts are outside the top 5, because obviously if you got a quarterback inside the top 5, you're not thinking about starting or sitting them or not anyway. We try to pick some guys that, like, maybe you got 2 quarterbacks that you're between and you're trying to pick one that might have the best matchup. For me this week, it's going to be Derek Carr at Kansas City. Honestly, their defense is so terrible. Kansas City's offense has been good. Derek Carr is a very comparable quarterback with Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfro's looking like he's coming back this week. Josh Jacobs. I mean, this looks like one of those 40-something to 30-something or 40-something. Kansas City's going to win probably, but it's going to be a shootout, and I think Derek Carr has a big game. And so, I mean, I'll pick, if I had him, I'd have him way up there on my starts, unless I had one of those top 5 guys. What about you? What quarterback you got starting?
Well, I could not believe when I seen this that he was not in the top 5.
Yep.
But I got Joe Burrow.
Yep, just outside.
He was like number 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Last year against Baltimore, he had 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. That was his big game. With Baltimore's suspect secondary, who hadn't played well, he might be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this week. He is going to have a monster game. If you have any part of the Bengals, you better get him in there, because he's going to throw it all over the field. And same thing, Baltimore's going to they're going to have a big game too.
Yep.
This is going to be probably the most fun game to watch this coming up weekend.
Oh yeah, I think there's going to be some good football this weekend. I really do. I got a good feeling this is going to be. I mean, football's always good, but I mean, we've had some.
Except for tonight.
I mean, I can update you real quick, Josh, if you'd like me to tell you. We're about to go into overtime.
Seriously?
Yep, without a touchdown on the board.
Oh my goodness!
He does have to. It is 9-6.
Because I had the over. I wanted to make sure I kept the over.
It's 9-6. Now he does have to make this, I believe, around a 30-something yarder for the Colts. So I mean,
the
it's
Colts
not
are going to
over yet.
win.
No, it's going to be tied.
Oh, okay.
9-9 if he makes it.
Oh,
it's
my
9-6 right now. 31 yarder for the Colts to go to overtime.
The over and under was 42, and I've seen a little bit of these offenses, and I'm like, this is the easiest under I could ever.
Yeah,
I had the under.
He made the field goal, so we're going to there's 5 seconds left for Denver. Now they have to run it back to the house, but if they don't, we're going to overtime without a touchdown in the game. I mean, this ain't the 1960s football league here. I mean, it looks like it, but I mean, I guess if you had the kickers for these two teams, you're probably pretty happy at this point. But outside of that,
defenses too.
Michael Pittman actually has had a decent game. I was looking earlier. I don't think anybody else really for either team has, but Michael Pittman right now, I say decent. Heck, I mean, 7 for 4 for 55 yards and 9 points. I'm pretty sure
he's probably the top performer.
Well, and I'm pretty sure, and I said good decent game because I know he had 9 points at halftime. So he hasn't had a point.
The kickers might be the top performers in this game.
They very well could be. But anyway, we'll get back on this.
Yeah, let's get back on track.
Anyway, so all right, so that's our starts for this week. Let's go to sits for quarterback. I've got one, and we talked about it a little bit ago, so we don't have to elaborate anymore. Matthew Stafford at home versus Dallas. He is a sit until further notice. All right.
Sit or drop if you need a spot.
I mean, you can drop him if you feel bad because you wasted a spot like I did drafting this man, then you can keep him on your bench. But I dropped him for Trevor Lawrence. I would advise the same thing because I think Trevor Lawrence is getting it together with Doug Peterson, the quarterback whisperer. But yeah, I'm sitting Matthew Stafford, especially against Dallas, who has the most quarterback pressures in the last 2 or 3 weeks in the NFL. And I think they were way up there on the most ever through this many weeks. So yeah, I do not want any part of a quarterback that's struggling playing Dallas's defense right now.
You just hope Stafford gets out of this game without getting injured, to be honest.
Yeah. Honestly,
the way their offensive line is playing,
Yep.
and as well as the defense for
Yep.
Dallas is playing, Parsons is going to be all over him in this game.
So
mine is I got Geno Smith. I know he's the number 10 right now, but he's playing the Saints defense, and I just think the Saints are going to come out to play. We need a win bad, like really bad. So
it's at the Dome. I know Geno's a veteran, but it's still at the Dome, and a quarterback that is overachieving. And honestly, I mean, we'll get to it here in a minute, but I got the Saints as one of my sleeper defenses because they're playing at the Dome. And Seattle's been playing over their head. And honestly, I think they might come in a little overconfident, personally. But anyway, so Geno's your sit at New Orleans. I think that's a great pick. Moving on to sleepers, quarterbacks. I got Carson Wentz this week. He's had 2 down weeks. The dude is throwing the ball 50 times a game. And this week he's at home versus Tennessee. The only thing, his wide receiving core is banged up a little bit, but he's still got plenty other playmakers to go to. He's playing Tennessee, the 30th ranked pass defense in the league. They have not allowed less than 23 points to a quarterback all season. Less than 23 points. Now, it does depend on your scoring in your league. but less than 23 points all season to a quarterback. And not to mention Washington's poor defense is not helping them that much either. So they're probably going to still have to score the ball. Now Tennessee's offense hasn't been like lighting the world on fire, but I mean, Carson Wentz has thrown the ball 50 times a game every game, whether they have to or not. So I like him as a sleeper this week, getting back on track against one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Who do you got as a sleeper this week, Josh?
I got Zach Wilson.
Yep.
He's got the weapons.
Yep.
He's got 3 really good wide receivers.
Yep.
And I think the Dolphins, even without the quarterback, are going to put up some points. So I think they're going to have to score.
Yep.
And this could actually be a shootout. And if so, he might have a big game.
Honestly, Zach Wilson's somebody I'd pick up, play over Matt Stafford, and I would if you're really feeling lucky, I'd drop Stafford for him and play him because I think Wilson's just got. They say a lot of these quarterbacks take that next step, and in the second year that they come out. And he looked good last week, threw the ball a lot. He's got the weapons, got a decent offensive line. I would feel a lot better if he had a better offensive-minded coach. But he's a gunslinger, man. And
he's got that look, like the it factor, kind of, I don't know. I just think he's going to turn.
He's got 3 top end wide receivers in Moore, Wilson, and Davis. He's got
some running backs.
Got some running backs that can catch the ball. He's got 2 tight ends. I like Tyler Conklin, but CJ Uzuma's there, and we already seen what he could do with Joe Burrow. So, the dude's got weapons out the wazoo, and if there's anything like we talked about, you can bet on talent, and he's got it there. So unless he just keeps, and not only that, I mean, the dude is playing to look good for Giselle. I mean, because Tom Brady and Giselle are, the rumor is they're calling it quits. They said Zach Wilson's moving in on that territory, and
he likes them older women.
Yeah, and so he's she's not going to go for a loser; she's going to go for a winner. But anyway, so moving on from that soap opera, that's all of our. Let's see. Oh, sorry. So you got Zach Wilson as your sleeper, and then let's go on to running back starts. We got 2. Both of our running back starts are going to be outside the top 10. These are ESPN rankings, by the way. Mine, Josh Jacobs, Kansas City. I mean, what else can you say? You got Derek Carr on there. I'm putting Josh Jacobs. He did it last week against a pretty stout Denver defense and killed it. I don't see any reason if they're in a shootout again why they don't say, well, heck, he looked good last week. Let's keep feeding him the ball. I think Devontae Adams is going to get his. I think Darren Waller is going to get his, but I think Josh Jacobs is going to do well also this week. That's one of mine. I'll tell you what we can do, Josh. I'll just go through both of mine, and then you can
do both of them.
For my other one, it's kind of crazy, but I'm going with a combo backfield here. I'm going to say Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris against Detroit, the 29th ranked run defense in the league. And not only that, they don't even know who their quarterback's going to be this week. Could be Matt Jones, could be Baylor Zappi. We know it ain't going to be Brian Hoyer. That he got put on IR with a concussion. So, I mean, they don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Jacoby Myers is banged up. He should be back, but he's still limited this week. So their wide receivers are banged up. They ain't got a quarterback. What else are they going to do? They're going to run the ball 40-something times, maybe 50 times. And against the 29th ranked run defense in the league, I mean, we've all seen Detroit. I mean, poor Detroit, man. Their offense is averaging like 35 points a game. Their defense is averaging giving up like 35 and a half or 36. I mean, so I think they're going to run the ball all day. And I guarantee you, we all know Bill Belichick ain't afraid to run the ball the first
every time.
First 50 times. So I think if you got both of them, fire them up. I'm gonna start. I got Ramondre in several leagues, and I'm starting them in the flex everywhere I can. So I think this is going to be a big running game for them. And I think you should fire both of them up. And honestly, both of them have been kind of flex worthy. And if Damien Harris hadn't been an RB2 the last couple of weeks. So I like both of them this week, which is crazy because normally I'm not a big proponent of Patriots running backs, but I don't think they have any other choice.
Yeah, I'm starting Harris in one of my leagues this week too.
So who you got at starting running back there, Josh?
All right. Well, I got two out of the same game. They're on different teams. Number one, I got James Robinson.
Yep.
I expect him to have a big bounce back after last week. He's playing Houston. Houston gives up the most points to running backs this year. I expect him to have 100 yards and a touchdown, probably. Big game for him, I expect. And then on the other side of the field, I like Damian Pierce. You know, he got it going over the last game or two. And I think that they'll be able to keep this game close enough with the Jags to where it's not a blowout and they can stick to the run.
That's right.
So I expect both of these running backs to have big games. Yeah.
All right. Is that your two, right?
That's my two.
Right.
Yep.
Let's move on to sits at the running back. This one really wasn't that hard for me. Honestly, he hasn't been much of a start all year, even though I thought he would be a little bit better. But that's going to be Zeke playing against the Rams at Los Angeles. I mean, honestly, no surprise to everybody. The Rams have the number one run defense in the league because you got it anchored right there in the middle with Aaron Donald, who doesn't let hardly anything get through. And Zeke, as we all know, is not really a bounce outside runner. Just not a good matchup for him. Not to mention, nobody's that worried about Cooper Rush throwing all over him. He's still just kind of managing the game. I do think Dallas is going to win, and I think they're going to be running the ball, but I don't think he's going to get that much production. Even if he gets 15 carries, I mean, he hadn't been getting the catches. I don't know, I don't see it happening. I think if it's going to happen for a running back, it's going to have to be one on the outside against the Rams. And I think that's going to be Pollard and not Zeke. So I got Zeke as a sit, and our sits are outside the top 10 as well on the running back. So don't like Zeke this week against the Rams. And who do you got, Josh?
I got Atlanta running backs, whether it be Algier or Huntley against that tough Tampa Bay defense. Same reason you picked Zeke for your sit. I'm picking these Atlanta running backs because Tampa Bay is great against the running back, whether it be running the ball or passing it to the running back. They're good on both. So yeah, we're both going with the defenses.
Yep. Now I will say I do like Tyler Algier for the rest of the season now that Cordero Patterson's out. And if somebody picks him up and plays him and he has a terrible game, which like you just said is very likely and probably to happen, you pick that dude up because I bet he bounces back. He's got plenty of games coming up where he's playing not so great run defenses, and I think he's going to be the number one guy. He was getting carries before Huntley was on the team, and I think he's going to get a majority of the carries after. He's also a very capable pass catcher, even though he hasn't been catching a lot of balls, but he did catch the one ball that they threw to him in this last game after Patterson went out, and Caleb Huntley did not get targeted at all. So
now Patterson he's only on IR. He's not out.
He's on IR.
So
he's out for
that's 4 weeks at least.
At least, and that's if he doesn't. That's if he comes back. When he does, like we've talked about the age thing. I mean, he was already kind of nicked up, and what really makes me think could be longer is he was already kind of banged up, and then he played, and he got injured during the game, and that's just never good when you're playing unhealthy. And you injure yourself more, if that makes sense. So that's just never a good sign. I mean, maybe it only takes 4 weeks, but at his age could be longer. And not only that, like we said earlier, do they really want to win? Do they want to find out what they have in Tyler Algier, let Cordero Patterson get healthy, and maybe have
Patterson's older too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Patterson. I'll give you his age.
30, in his 30s.
Well into his 30s. Well, I say 31. Sorry, I really thought he was 32 or 33 at least. but 31. So injured reserve with a knee injury. We'll just have to see how it plays out, but we'll be updating you as he gets closer to find out if he's gonna be able to return after his 4 weeks or not. But I like Tyler Algier, just not against this Tampa Bay front, who I think with their offense getting better is going to help their defense get better. All right, moving on to sleepers at the running back position. Now, these are running backs that are outside the top 20. And for me, it's in that same game. I have Rachaad White versus Atlanta. For one, I think they are going to be up. 2, if they are up, I think they're going to try to protect. I think they're going to be up big. And if they are up, I think they're going to try to protect Leonard Fournette's health. Rachaad White has looked better in the past couple weeks, and I think he's going to get the opportunity and the volume. Also, he's getting the catches from Tom Brady, or at least he did last week. I mean, you cannot ignore 5 catches on 5 targets from Tom Brady in his offense, and that's what he had last week. And I think I had him on my waiver column as somebody to pick up. I don't know if you could play him this week unless you're desperate, but I definitely think he's flex worthy if you're in a bind. Like say you had Jonathan Taylor and you got to start, your flex that you had at running back. I think you could do worse than starting Rachaad White in your flex and hoping that he has a good game against Atlanta.
Well,
I just think
questionable too, and going into the game,
he is. But I think that's also. It seems like they put all their. Honestly, it seems like they put all their stars as questionable.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe we always thought that was a Belichick thing, but heck, maybe that's a Tom Brady thing.
But I think he
there.
did. I think he did have some little small injury. He limped off the field like early in the year, and I don't think he ever got over it.
They don't have any updates on him right here. Normally, if he is on the injury report, they have it. I'm pulling him up on a sleeper.
I expect him to play, but like you said, they're not going to leave him in this game if they're up to get hurt worse.
No, and Tom Brady's super comfortable with him, and I really don't think. But no, they don't have any injury on him right now. So as of right now, he's not injured. But I do think Rachaad White has a big game because I think they're going to win and win big, and I think they're going to turn it over to White as much as possible. Who do you got as a sleeper there, Josh?
Well, I have 2 that you've already mentioned, the New England running backs. I had them as my sleeper. I really think Harris has a big game.
Yep.
I think both of them could definitely be started at a flex. I think New England runs the ball, slows down that Detroit Lions offense. Who would ever thought we'd be saying that?
Well, I mean, honestly, though, as bad as as bad New England's defense is so bad. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how this game's going to go because their pass defense is like number 17 in the league. And honestly, I contemplated putting Jared Goff in there as a quarterback start, but I was looking for somebody a little bit farther out because I think he's ranked this week like number 6 or 7 against New England's number 17 pass defense. But I don't know. This is gonna be one of the weird games where it's because one team's gonna run the ball a lot and the other team's gonna probably throw the ball a lot.
Well, I think Lions win this game just because they're going to be able to outscore them.
I agree. But yeah, I think both the New England running backs are going to be very serviceable.
Yep.
Moving on to wide receiver starts. These are going to be wide receivers outside of the top 15 in ESPN rankings. Obviously, if you got a wide receiver inside the top 15, don't put them on your bench. I mean, it really doesn't matter who it is because they have that capability every week to win your league pretty much. And like we talked about already in this podcast, wide receivers are starting to take over. And if they're in that top 15, they're probably a league winner at some point or another in the season. So, but number 1 for me is going to be Chris Olave versus at New Orleans against Seattle. I mean, what else is there to say? He did it with Jameis before he got out, and then he did it with Andy Dalton. last week. And now not as impressive with Dalton, but Dalton, is a completely different game script, completely different game, but he's got the most air yards in the NFL still. He looks like he's starting to take over. Michael Thomas is still out, and I don't know if he's come back. As far as I know, he still hasn't practiced. So if he is out, I would bet even more. Yeah, he missed another practice today. So it's not looking good for him.
He's so aggravating, man.
Yeah, man. I think Chris Olave against Seattle, they've got an okay pass defense. That's probably the best part of their defense. But man, the talent, you could just see it when he's on the field. His routes are so crisp. He can go get it if you throw it up to him. And I think if Dalton's in there again, I think Jameis missed another practice today. I'll verify that while I'm talking. But if Dalton, I think
Dalton's going to start.
I think their chemistry only grows because it's been Jameis all off season, everything. Yeah, still didn't practice again today. So I think Dalton starts, and I think their chemistry grows, and I think he feeds Olave the ball because he knows he can make a play. And he's been kind of a gunslinger in the past in Cincinnati when he was there, and at Dallas a little bit. And I think he can do something with it. And I like Chris Olave at the Dome. I think he shows out at home. Next guy is who we talked about earlier, Terry McLaurin. Several things. For one, the main thing, number 29 against wide receivers. They're number 30 against the pass for quarterbacks, and they're number 29 against wide receivers, Tennessee, at home. Number two, Curtis Samuel missed practice this week for an illness. We don't know what illness. They haven't elaborated. I mean, technically COVID's still going around. If it was something like that and he got ruled out, that would be a big plus for Terry McLaurin and his pass volume. But also, I think Carson Wentz just starts trying to give him the ball. A little bit of that squeaky wheel gets the grease. I'm not saying Terry McLaurin's that tight, but against a poor pass defense, I think your number one talented wide receiver is going to get fed the ball a little bit more. And I think it's going to be a get-right game for Terry McLaurin. I really like him this week. And, they're throwing the ball 50 times. And not to mention Jahan Dotson, hamstring injury. I'm pretty sure he's going to miss this week. So there's more targets to go toward Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I think Dotson's pretty much out.
Yeah. So
I don't know if they've actually said it, but I think he's going to be out.
And especially if Samuel, Dotson, like I said, he's out, but if Samuel's out too, why would you not feed it to the best wide receiver on your team anyway? So I look for him to have a really big week this week. And if he doesn't, then I think you got to start thinking about who you can play over him. You don't drop him, but you wait until him and Wentz get that chemistry going. But who you got at your wide receiver starts this week, Josh?
First, I got Chris Godwin.
Yep.
He looks like he's back.
Yep.
10 targets this past week. I think that might even go up every week. I got him in a couple leagues. I know you said you had him. We've had to set him. We've had to set him the first few weeks, rough. But it's about to pay off.
Yep.
And my other one is Devonta Smith.
Yep.
I think he's going to have a big game, about every 2 or 3.
That's what I'll say. About every other week or so, he has a big one, and this is that other week right now. So
yeah, so I think he might have a big game.
Those. And not only that, but Hurts kind of had a down game, and I think he bounces back with a big game this week, and that's obviously going to help the pass catchers there.
And that's going to be a high scoring game.
Yep.
They're playing the Cardinals.
That's right.
Their defense is terrible. So Hurts is going to be throwing it all over the field.
All right. So let's move on to our sits at wide receivers. These are outside the top 15 as well. Deontay Johnson at Buffalo for me. For one, a lot of people might not realize, even though Buffalo's defense has been fairly as good as it has been, they have not had Tre'Davious White all year. He's supposed to come back this week. I don't think that's going to be good news for Deontay Johnson. Number two, Kenny Pickett's going to start. And who's Kenny Pickett's favorite wide receiver? George Pickens. And I don't think that's good news for Deontay Johnson either. So I don't think this is really going to be that great of a game for Pittsburgh in general. But I think if you got Deontay Johnson, you could probably find – I mean, it would be hard to sit him because that might be some people's like for instance, me that drafted running back heavy. It might be your wide receiver one and you just got to play him. But, man, I think it's going to be a rough game for Deontay Johnson this week, personally. What about you, Josh? What you got?
I'm gonna go again with DJ Moore, man.
I know, dude.
I mean, that it's just horrible, man.
Dude, I don't even know what to say, man. Like, I was so high on him coming in. I talked about it on our first couple podcasts. Too. And dude,
but I don't think
honestly,
it's him, man.
I don't. It's definitely
it's
not
the quarterback.
Him. It's definitely not
and the
him.
coach, the coaching and the quarterback.
Well, and honestly, I think Baker's one of them loose cannons that nobody's got any rein on. Like I don't think it matters what the coach tells Baker to do. He just seems like one of those guys. Like, he's like, oh yes, sir, I'll do that. Yes, sir. Yeah, sounds good. And he's like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. You know what I mean?
I don't think he's good this year. I mean, to me, he looks like the worst quarterback in the league.
To me,
I don't know anybody that I would rather have.
I feel
have
like
over him.
This is a Johnny Manziel saga all over again. I mean, does it not seem like that?
Well, I think part of that was, man, he was in every, he had that his first year, he done pretty good. And then he was in every commercial you've seen on TV. Yep. And I think his head just got too big.
That's right. But anyway, great pick. Obviously, DJ Moore.
I hope
I'll
I'm
run
wrong.
him. I do too. And hey, you know what? I mean, if I was the Saints, like, I know some Saints people out there think I'm crazy, but I'd be like, I'll trade you Michael Thomas for DJ Moore right now, straight up. I mean, Michael Thomas is injured, but I mean, he's done a lot, this, that, and the other. But man, I've been on the Michael Thomas trade bandwagon for the last couple of years.
Oh, I have too. I'm so aggravated with him. I
mean, I know.
And now it's a toe. It's a toe that's keeping him out.
I know. Turf toe's real for wide receivers.
No, it
is.
Get it. It is. But have they said it's turf toe?
No.
I mean, I'm assuming that's what it is. Yeah.
But
if it's turf toe, that's kept a lot of people out. Yeah.
And like you said, it's always something though.
Yeah.
And does this have to do with, and I hate to be like this, but does this have to do with Jameis Winston being out and maybe him wanting Jameis to be his quarterback? You know what I mean?
I don't know. He's a diva. I just think he's a diva.
Yeah. So, well, I mean,
think ever since he got that money, he turned into a different person.
Well, the rumor was he didn't play because he didn't like Sean Payton. They didn't get along, so he didn't play then. That was a rumor then. And then
Sean Payton made him that money.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway. I could talk all day on that. Let's don't get started.
Yep. So moving on to our wide receiver sleepers. These are sleepers outside the top 20. This is a guy, I've actually got two. I'll be brief on him just because there's some good statistics on one that I really wanted to put. But the other one, I just feel like he has a bounce back game. He's been down. He hasn't been healthy. We talked about him earlier. I think Gabe Davis at home against Pittsburgh, not that great of a defense as it was. I feel like he's healthy this week. I feel like Josh Allen can feel that he needs to get him going. And I think Stephon Diggs could probably feel that too, because Diggs has been eating it up. And not only that, Dawson Knox is banged up. I don't know if he plays. He's got 2 injuries right now. I think he's been limited this Thursday. I don't know. I have to pull it up. But if Dawson Knox is out, McKenzie's still in concussion protocol as far as I know. Jamison Crowder broke his freaking ankle. Knox has got a foot and a hamstring injury. Let's see if McKenzie is back. McKenzie returns to practice Thursday, limited. So that doesn't necessarily mean he cleared concussion protocol. He can still practice limited and be in concussion protocol. So we'll have to see if he clears that. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's a get right game for Gabe Davis. Like we just said earlier, inconsistent. He's been inconsistent. He's been down 2 weeks. I think this is an up game against Pittsburgh at home. I think he wants to show out, you know. The other guy I got, Corey Davis against Miami. Zach Wilson's favorite target. I mean, he was let's see. Miami, the 27th worst pass defense against wide receivers.
Which is crazy because last year they were so good.
Yeah, I mean, Byron Jones, I believe, is still out for that defense, and he is their lockdown corner, you know. And as we all know, that lockdown corner is a vital piece of a pass defense. And he's still out, I believe. He got put on IR at the beginning of the season. So if he's not back, which I mean, you know, I'll have to look up here in a minute to see if he's back or when he's coming back. But I mean, Corey Davis, Zach Wilson's favorite target. They're going to have to throw the ball. I think Miami's going to score. You know, like we both talked, it's going to be a fairly high-scoring game. And I think Corey Davis is a good sleeper. And as long as Zach Wilson's the quarterback, I think he's somebody that you might be looking at flexing some throughout the next couple weeks. Who you got as a sleeper there, Josh, at wide receiver?
So my sleeper is he's on down there, number 50. It's George Pickens. George Pickens.
Dude, you ain't got to convince me.
30% target share there. It seems like he's the new favorite wide receiver. They're going to be down. They're going to have to throw it. So somebody's got to make some catches to,
That's right.
You know, so and actually, you know, Pittsburgh's coming in with a chip on their shoulder. They're mad. It's all over the spread. Have you seen that? Because
I haven't.
They have Pittsburgh at plus 14, which is like an unheard of spread for an NFL game. It usually don't get that high.
Yeah.
And they're all up in the air, got a chip on their shoulder. They're talking about it and how disrespected, and which they are terrible this year. But
I'll say
anyway,
their offensive line, I mean, you know.
Well, in their defense, you know, once they lost their best player, they had they hadn't been the same. But anyway, they're going to try to stay in this game by throwing the ball. They're going to have to, even though they got a rookie at quarterback. But I think that's who he's going to look for.
I like it.
And hey, why not?
Hey, I'm starting him at flex in 2 leagues. I just can't. I just feel like this is his breakout party coming up. Now, I do think it's going to be possibly a little rough sledding against Buffalo. I don't think it's going to be as good as it will be, and it can be. But Tre'Davious White, I feel like he's going to be on Deontay Johnson. I don't think he's going to be on George Pickens. Now,
yeah, and Johnson's kind of banged up coming into the game too, which he's always got a question mark by his back.
And not only that, but I think they're going to move the pocket. It's going to be a lot of RPOs, and I think Kenny Pickett's a lot better at those than Trubisky. Trubisky's got wheels, but I don't think he throws the ball on the run as well as Kenny Pickett does. And Kenny Pickett's a very accurate quarterback, and I think that's going to go a long way for this offense. And I mean, we've seen the catches that George Pickens can make, and has to make because Trubisky is not that accurate of a quarter. Not here recently anyway. He's been having some pretty crazy throws, and I think this is going to be. I don't think they're going to win, and I don't know if it's going to be as close. I don't know if it's going to be that that far out on the spread, but it could be. But I think Pittsburgh is it's going to be a little bit better to watch than it has been for sure. All right, let's move on to our starts at tight end. These are outside the top 5 because we already talked about how bad tight end is outside the top 5. For me, I'm going Dallas Goedert at Arizona. Arizona is the worst defense against the tight end in the league. And Dallas Goedert has actually been pretty darn good this year. I was really shocked he was not in the top 5. But I think the Eagles in general have a bounce back offensive game, and I think Dallas Goedert's going to do pretty good. I think Dallas Goedert might be number 1 in the league in yards per catch, or air yards or yards per catch at tight end one of the two. They were talking about that on League, and I didn't realize that because I didn't think he was having that good of a year. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, he's up. It's yards per catch. He's pretty far up there. I know one game he was averaging 16. Let's see, the first game he was averaging 20 yards per catch, 16 on the next one, then 8 on week 3, and then 14 again on week 4. That's a lot, especially for tight ends. And I think he's going to have a good game against the worst pass defense against tight ends in the league. So that's my tight end start for the week. Who you got, Josh?
Pat Fryermuth.
Yep.
Same thing I was talking about a while ago with George Pickens. They're going to be down. Who does the rookie quarterbacks usually to throw the ball to? It's going to be the tight end.
Yep.
I mean,
and he's athletic. That's what a lot of people don't realize. He's an
good.
Athletic tight end. He is not just one of these big blocking tight ends, which most of them aren't nowadays because they're not making it in the league if they're not. But he's a good athlete, like, Travis Kelce-esque athlete. And he's only a second-year player, and I think he continues to grow. And I think this Pittsburgh team is on to a core coming here with Najee Harris, George Pickens, Fryermuth, Kenny Pickett. Man,
get their defense healthy,
dude. I love the Saints, but man, I wish our core was looking that young and that good right now. Let's see. Moving on to our tight end sits. You could just put your finger on somebody for this list, but right now, this is a guy I'm actually trying to pick him up in the league right now. I've got a waiver claim in. Somebody dropped him, and I think he's got way better days to come, but I do think he's a sit this week, and that's Dalton Schultz against the Rams. And this is another really good part of the Rams defense. They're the second against tight ends in the league so far this year. We've already talked about their Cooper Rush. He's very serviceable, but they're not going to let him throw a whole bunch during the game. Honestly, I think they even keep Schultz in to block a little bit more than they usually do, just to give him some more protection and maybe to run the ball a little bit more. And once again, like I said, the Rams, second best team in the league against tight ends. I just don't think it's a good matchup. I do think whenever another little stat I did have off the side here, the Rams have only given up 10 points once this year to a tight end, and it was like 10.4 points. So you'll take 10 points, but if they've only given it up once so far, I would probably not bank on them doing it against Dallas with a backup quarterback and a chance that they're probably going to be leading, wanting to run the ball. That's just me personally, but I do think Schultz has got better days to come, especially when Dak comes back. We already know how he likes to throw to Schultz, and they have a good chemistry together. So if for some reason somebody does drop him out there in your league, feel free to pick him up, throw him on the bench, because I think Dak's back in a minimum 2 weeks. A maximum 2 weeks. I don't know if he comes back next week yet, but I definitely think he's back by the next for sure. Who you got to sit there, Josh?
I got the same one.
Oh,
I got
there you
Dalton
go.
Schultz.
Well,
he has done absolutely nothing with Cooper Rush as the quarterback.
Yeah,
that's enough said right there.
He's
not looking for him at all.
Tight end, he really is. It's just they don't have the chemistry. He's been banged up, and that's just not what their offense is wanting to do right now. Throw the ball any more than they have to.
They're a defensive team right now.
Yep, and I guarantee you they're beating that drum in that offensive room. Get the ball to CeeDee Lamb, and don't worry about it. That's what it looks like because they're throwing on the ball.
Which I think CeeDee Lamb could have a pretty good game this week.
I do too. I do too, and I think that's smart. But
I almost had him as one of my starts.
Who, CeeDee Lamb? Oh yeah, I think that would have been a solid start. I honestly, after the first game with Cooper Rush, they had me hesitant, but after that first game when he targeted them all them times, I was like, nope. They are telling him, you throw the ball to this man right here, he'll make something happen. And that's their guy. And I think that was a relief for a lot of CeeDee Lamb owners out there. He was somebody I was targeting in the draft, and I did not get Unfortunately, I ended up with more shares of DJ Moore than I did CeeDee Lamb, but
I've got him in one league.
I think he's really going to blow it up for some people. If you could trade for him, I know he's still doing good, but some people might still be a little hesitant. If you could trade for him, I think he'd be worth it because I think he's only going to get better as the season goes. Moving on to sleeper tight ends. These are outside the top 10. Mine for me, going back to the well for another game that I think is going to be fairly high but terrible against tight ends, is Logan Thomas for the Washington Commanders against Tennessee. For one, all the wide receiver injuries. Jahan Dotson, their big red zone threat, he's out. Logan Thomas is a huge red zone threat for them. Tennessee has given up 40 points they gave up 40 points to the tight end position from the Colts last week. 40 points last week to tight ends. Mo Alley Cox had 29 of them. But anyway, so I like Logan Thomas against Tennessee this week, just for the fact Curtis Samuel illness, Jahan Dotson's out. Plus, they're going to throw the ball 50 times. You got to throw it to somebody. So I think Logan Thomas has got a good chance to have a big game this week. So who do you got as a sleeper tight end, Josh?
I got Hayden Hurst. Going back to what I was saying,
like it.
You want any part of this Bengals offense, you want this coming up week. He is going to spread the ball around and sling it. And Hurst should have more catches than he's been having.
That's right. I like it. Moving on. Last but not least, everybody's favorite segment of the whole podcast, kickers and defenses. Don't turn it off yet, guys. Just going to go over just a few. I don't know if you have any lined out, Josh. I know sometimes.
I got some.
I got a favorite kicker, and I listed him on my waiver wire, and I've been listing him, and I'm going to list him again and again until he's over that threshold. But Young Ho Koo for Atlanta, the number one kicker in fantasy football, still less than 60% owned.
I just want you to know, I listened to you and I picked him up in the league.
I know they're playing at Tampa Bay, but that run defense is going to stop them. They're going to be trying to put some kind of points up. He's the number one kicker. I don't know what else to say. Whenever you've got a guy through 4 weeks that's the number one player to position, and it's one that you normally are picking up and dropping people a lot, you just put that dude in your lineup and you let him go until he's not doing good. Then you go to somebody else. Well, he's still doing good. I think
Atlanta's going to stall and not be able to get in the end zone. And what are they going to do? They're going to kick a field goal.
Yep, and it's at Tampa Bay. It'll be fine weather in Florida still, as long as there's not a hurricane bearing down, which there's not currently. So that's who I got. What kicker do you like this week?
I got Greg Joseph.
Yep.
He's been a good kicker this year too. From Minnesota.
Great.
And they move the ball pretty good.
Somebody else not owned as much as he should be.
Yep.
Next guy, sick kicker. This is just one of those things, but Matt Gay against Dallas. Man, honestly, I just don't like any Rams against Dallas this week. For one, he really hasn't been that great all year because their offense has been pretty terrible. And two, they're playing Dallas, and I don't think they move the ball as much. I think they turn the ball over more because Dallas is pretty good at generating turnovers. And when you turn the ball over, you're not getting chances at field goals.
I bet you one thing, though, and I don't know for sure, but I guarantee you he's got more field goals than Stafford has touchdowns.
I'd be willing to bet that too. I can look it up, but I'm going to take your word for it. I'm going to assume that is true.
He's just got to have more than 4, and I know he had 2 or 3 in the last game.
You got me looking now. I'm gonna pull it up. Let's see.
Well, I got Nick Folk for New England as my. He's not done well this year. Yep. New England's not done well on offense this year. So
all right,
that's my set.
You're correct. Matt Gay has 4, 5, 7 field goals on the year so far. That's not that much. But moving on.
But 4 touchdowns is not much either.
No, it's not. Sleeper kickers. It's hard to call a kicker a sleeper, but this one's pretty far down there. And this guy has a long history of being really good, and he's not owned as much. And he's on a really underrated offensive team. That's Greg Zuerlein for the Jets. playing against Miami. I think there's going to be a fair amount of scoring. I think the Jets are going to move the ball against Miami plenty. Some of their drives are going to stall out. They got a younger quarterback. And Greg Zuerlein was like one of the top rated kickers for years for the Rams. And then he was at and then he was at Dallas last year. Just and you can't ever go wrong with a good veteran kicker. And he's not owned in like hardly any leagues because he plays for the Jets. And it's like, if you play for the Jets, you may as well not be owned in hardly any leagues. So
that's changing though.
It is. It's getting better. People are catching on. But anyway, I like Zuerlein. I don't know if you have a sleeper kicker.
Yeah, I got one. Brett Maher for Dallas.
Yeah.
He's one of the better kickers this year, and he's out there. Number
three in the league, right behind. I think it's number one. Like we said, it's Koo. Number two might be Justin Tucker, and I think it's Brett Maher. And I think that's somebody you roll with every week at home in the dome, kicking a lot of field goals. I think that's what you roll with.
Well, and Dallas seems to move the ball, and
that's right.
You just can't get the touchdowns in. So he's, you're going to have a few field goals every game with Dallas.
Moving on to defensive special teams. Favorite start is going to be the Eagles at Arizona. I mean, what else can you say? They're the hottest defense in the league right now. They've put up at least 15 points in the last 3 weeks, depending on your scoring. But for most leagues, 15 points in the past 3 weeks. They're playing at Arizona. I mean, Arizona's an okay offense, but let's face it, they've been really underwhelming. They're lacking at the wide receiver depth, and they're just not playing that great right now. So, and I look for the Eagles to continue getting turnovers and sacks. Kyler Murray is a lot more elusive than some of the quarterbacks they've faced, but, I mean, they're hot. They're on a roll, and I think you keep rolling with them. Well, you got a favorite defense this week?
Yeah, another one that's hot, 49ers.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They're facing Carolina, who cannot pass the ball.
Yep.
And, man, they've been playing great.
That's right.
Just like you was talking about. So I'm going to go with them.
Sits for defense. I mean, you can go with either defense on this side of the ball right here, but I got Miami at the Jets. Miami's been okay. They had a really good couple weeks, and then they kind of fell off a little bit, had some injuries. But Miami at the Jets or Jets at Miami, I think either one of them are. I think it's, like we said, it's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't like either one of those defenses. You got one.
The easy pick would be Pittsburgh at Buffalo, but I don't think you got to worry about nobody starting Pittsburgh. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to go with Baltimore because I think Cincinnati's going to put on a whole lot of points.
I agree.
And Baltimore's one that some people are playing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Baltimore.
And honestly, their defense has been pretty overrated this year. And I seen a stat today that
they're starting to be dropped.
That Baltimore led the entire game. I mean, Baltimore led the entire game this past week, except for the last 14 seconds. I mean, there's nobody else you can blame that on but your defense. The last 14 seconds is when they lost.
Well, and I think the coach made a couple of questionable calls in that game too. So there's two, a lot of times in a close game like that, you can blame the coach.
Yeah. But either way.
But defense, I agree. They could have held them for sure.
Yeah. And then sleeper defense, I've got two. One of them is pretty obvious. Josh and I have talked about already, and that's Jacksonville against Houston. Jacksonville is the number 5 ranked defense in points, depending on your scoring in the league right now. And I'm to mention Houston's giving up sacks left and right, throwing interceptions. Sacks are getting you points. Interceptions, you got a chance for a touchdown. That's getting you points. I mean, I think Jacksonville has a great week against Houston. And also, I had to throw in there, I kind of led with earlier, New Orleans at home against Seattle. I mean, they're at the Dome, and Geno has to break down at some time. He's not going to keep this up. If he was going to keep this up, he wouldn't be Geno Smith, and he wouldn't be somebody that's been a backup for the last several years in his career. I don't believe that he is this breakthrough quarterback at this point in his career with this team. And you're playing the Saints in the Dome. and that defense is going to be jacked up. And I think Seattle might come in a little overconfident because they've been playing so well. And so I like New Orleans against Seattle.
Well, my sleeper is a team I picked up in 2 out of my 4 leagues, and I could not believe they were there because of the leagues I'm in, and that is New Orleans.
Yep.
I have New Orleans just like you do, but they're usually always on somebody's team.
That's right.
Just because New Orleans fans, but actually people had dropped them, and so I was able to pick them up so I can play them. So there's nothing in fantasy like being able to play somebody you really want to root for. So.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. But I mean, New Orleans, their defense, the poor guys, they've been hanging on the best they can. But when your offense has so many 3 and outs so often, you get burned out, and because you spend so much time on the field, your time of possession's all cattywampus, and it's hard to hang on for that long. I
think that changes this week, though.
I do too. I think the offense, they looked like they were starting to get in a groove a little bit more toward the end of the game last week with Dalton.
Dalton definitely looked better towards the end of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying Dalton's a long-term answer by any means, but he looks a lot better like the answer right now than Jameis has all year.
Well,
and you got to on injury if you want, but man,
Kamara's supposed to be back too.
Yeah, I think you give Dalton some more weapons, and you give that defense a little bit more time off on the sideline to catch their breath, and then I think we're looking like our old Saints again, with Olave running some deep routes, catching some bombs like Devery Henderson back in the day, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this team looks this weekend. But,
I'll tell you what, though, if they lose this game at home, we're going to be worried.
Yeah, no, if they do lose this game at home, we better be trying to figure out a long-term plan at least, and
it might be the coach.
Yeah, and that's one thing which there's been a lot of speculation about defensive head coaches. There has not been very many successful ones. The only one has been Sean McDermott in Buffalo. There's not been hardly any successful him and Belichick, obviously Belichick, but I mean, I think that's just a whole different ball game with him because he's from a whole different era, honestly. But there's not been that many successful defensive-minded head coaches in the NFL, and I mean that's just because it's leaning more toward an offensive-based league. I do think defense still wins championships, obviously. But I think your head coach has got to be an offensive-minded head coach.
Well, I think Allen is great at what he does, defensive coordinator. He is great, but I think he just got over his head when he took over the head coaching job here.
But we will have to see this weekend. But that's going to wrap it up for us here at Dirty Boot Sports Chasing the Trophy Podcast. Please follow us, like us, subscribe to us, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Spotify, whatever you got. If you have any questions or comments on anything that you want to hear more about or us to talk about, please reach out to us personally or leave us some comments somewhere or shoot us an email somewhere, and we'll be happy to address that on the podcast. But as far as that goes, we're going to sign off. Good luck on your fantasy leagues this weekend, guys, and we'll talk to y'all next week.